1 hour prior to the start of a new series. And you know what that means? That means it's Fish Stripes Live, our live streams counting down to first pitch for an hour. It's Eli Sussman here. You know me. I'm the one that sends out our tweets and does all of our operations here at Fish Stripes. And of course, we have Ethan Badowski, who is our main man, sitting in on all the pressers, doing all these live streams with me. And we also have just in time, Alex Carver is
always
hopping
right,
in as well.
Always right on time. Always with the promptness, Alex Carver.
Only for you guys.
Marlins versus Orioles, the first of 2 games from Lone Depot Park in Miami, closing out this homestand with a chance for the Marlins to get to 500 tonight, a chance to get over 500 if they actually sweep this series. But even more so than wins and losses right now, I think the hot topic on everybody's mind is center field. Now that we got that confirmation that Starling Marte is out a while, we'll get into that a little bit later about his time frame from being out. It could be a little longer than you think, a decent chunk of the season where he might be sidelined. And in the meantime, Lewis Brinson is back. He was only gone for about 8 days is when he was technically optioned to the fish tank. And he's starting in center field tonight, batting in the 8th spot against a right-hander, which we did not see a lot last year at all. And I'll just defer to Ethan on that about the comments we got from Don Mattingly pregame about putting him in the lineup right away and against the righty, and the fact that he might be their primary center fielder for the foreseeable future, which is a bit of a surprise.
Well, I don't think, it's not too much of a surprise because everybody just kind of knew, like, okay, they're going to give Brinson the shot because what else are they going to do? They're not going to pick anybody up. They don't, Bladay's not a center fielder. Duvall and Dickerson can't, and Cooper, you're not really going to feel great about them playing defense out there. So I think the Marlins see this as one last chance for Lewis Brinson to show that he can be a serviceable major leaguer. And they have to give him every chance they can because of what he means to his organization, right? They traded an MVP, and he was the headliner of the deal. They haven't gotten anything out of the deal so far. They just sent Isan back to the alternate training site. He lost out in spring to Jazz. Yamamoto's on another team. Monte, will be. And Brinson has been, there's been this narrative around him for a long time. Since they traded for him, and he struggled, obviously. So the Marlins are going to give him every single chance that they can, right? Like, just like they did with Isan. They gave Isan the chance to spring. He lost, and Jazz took over, and so they are going in a different direction now. They're going to give Brinson every single chance, and this might be his final one now because he's out of options because of that emergency option that they had to use in New York, which killed them, has had their bench short. They still need to add another bench bat somewhere. I would like to see some Brian Miller. I was actually, okay with seeing Brian Miller in this instance, but Lou is the obvious choice here. He was really good against lefties last year, and Mattingly said that in the press conference today that he was so what he did last year, the strides he made last year, simply earned him this chance, right? He didn't really necessarily prove anything about the longevity of his career. He showed them that he deserves one more shot to show, to do something, make an impact, make an impression on the fans and the team and the management. So this is his last shot, and I'm fine with them, playing him, going for it. Because like I said, he was really good against lefties last year. So at least he can be effective somewhat in that role. He was obviously was in very limited action this year, but he didn't strike out against lefties, and he hit the ball hard every time he was up against the lefty. But then against righties, he struck out every time. So it's that balance that he's going to have to work with. I would expect to see some John Birdie out there, but the Marlins, he is their only, backup infielder, and he's more valuable in that role than he would be starting in center field every day. And how much more offensive potential does Mag Sierra have than Brinson? At least Brinson has some natural pop in his bat. So, yeah, they're going to get creative here, but we're going to see Brinson at least for the beginning. And obviously the bigger concern now is with Marte, and I guess we can get to that in a second, but I'm curious what Alex has to say about Brinson.
So I've been dealing with this, Ethan, since 2:45 on Twitter when we heard the news from Jason, right? With the roster move. And then, of course, Mattingly talked about it. I've been getting DMs. I've been reading posts. I've been talking to Daniel. I've been talking to Eli. Guys, this is what we have to do right now. I want everybody that is viewing Eli live or that will view this on YouTube in the near future or on Twitch, wherever you may be watching, just repeat after me real quick. Let's go right here. Just repeat after me. Let's take a deep breath, guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. There you go. Let's take a deep breath. Ethan, you just laid it out. The Marlins, this was the only move that made sense for the Marlins in this instance. They're not going to call up Isan Diaz. People were saying, oh, call up Isan Diaz and put John Birdie in the outfield full-time with Max. No, they weren't going to do that. They like Birdie where he is. They like the speed off the bench, lefty bat off the bench with Magneuris Sierra. They weren't going to call up Brian Miller. He's not on the 40-man roster, and there's nobody to really put to the 60-day, right? They're all rehabbing. They all should be back in pretty short order. Brian Miller's not on the 40-man. He was in the first round of cuts. I'd love to see him get a shot. They weren't going to do that. So where else do you go? Monte Harrison, he needs reps. He is on the 40-man. Yes, he needs reps in the minors. He proved that in spring training. This was the centerpiece of that Yelich deal. You just laid it out, Ethan. This was the guy that they really went after. Yeah, they threw in Monte and, of course, the other complementary pieces, but this was the guy that they wanted. This was the guy that raked in the minors. He hit 400 in the minors, basically, for his career in the minors. And he has nothing left to prove in minor league baseball. So he's either going to come here now, this is his last shot, I agree, and he's going to succeed with the Marlins, or he's going to leave next season, and the hope is that the Marlins can get something out of him because of what they gave up for him. So this is that instance where, I just hate to see all of this negative stuff around Lewis Brinson on Twitter. It's just not necessary. And, I hate it. He's the nicest guy in the world. He's charitable with his time. He does a ton of stuff in the offseason. Give the guy his last shot. If you agree with it or you don't have to bash the player. He's going to come up and he's going to do his best. If that's good enough, it's good enough. And if it's not, it's not. And that'll be the end of the day. I just can't stand this negative banter. Let's get around this guy. Let's see what he can do. Hopefully he can do it against righties. I do agree with Mattingly. I like the adjustments we saw him make last season. Will that work out against righties? We'll see what happens. But here we go. Last shot. Hope he can prove something. And that's it.
No, I'm with you in the terms of that. We shouldn't really have any expectations, right? Because this is his last chance. This is his last stand. So there's no reason to be negative. There's no reason to get mad that he's back. There's no reason to hate a guy. He's done nothing to be hated. Like you said, he's the nicest guy. He's charitable.
How can you root against that face?
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing. He's a South Florida boy. He grew up a Marlins fan. He loved Juan Pierre. That's why he wore number 9 before he changed his number. Like, I don't know how people can root against this guy. Obviously, the way it's gone hasn't worked out so far. It sucks because of what he could have meant to the organization if he had panned out, if he had become a really good baseball player. And yeah, I do kind of feel like in the comments here, there was so much pressure on him from the beginning. He was the opening day leadoff hitter in his first year in Miami, so there's been pressure on him from the beginning that he has to, and especially with how good Yelich has been since he was traded. He was an MVP. It's brutal, the position that he was put in. If the Marlins could get anything out of this guy, any type of offensive value out of this guy while they're trying to replace Starling Marte, he's not going to replace Starling Marte. Nobody that the Marlins could bring in, right, is going to replace Starling Marte. So he's not going to live up to that. If he can just provide some kind of serviceable offensive production so that the Marlins can just keep it going a little bit. Obviously, they're not going to be the same team without Starling Marte. If he can make up for it a little bit, then he'll do the job. He'll get the job done. So, there's no point in setting any expectations. We know what he has been in his career, and if it shows up, then there's no reason to be negative. That's just who he is. But let's support. I'm with you. Let's get behind the guy. Let's support the guy. Let's just say, this is his chance, and hope it works out, because I certainly hope it works out, and I feel like a lot of people feel the same way for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been talking to Eli too. If you're out on the guy, if you're just totally out, if you say, okay, I know this has to be the move, but I just don't think anything's going to happen, that's fair, and that's fine, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's me. I probably haven't been clear enough articulating my position, but yeah, I am very skeptical of him, and that's why I love to have Alex on, because Alex he's always like holding out hope. He's always looking at very closely at what Brinson has done, and you're genuinely optimistic about the adjustments he's made. And I'd love to hear about what specifically you see that you think is different from, at least be clear about where you think he's improved from where he was like in 2018 or in 2019. What's the difference between then and now, at least offensively, I guess?
Yeah, and this is a guy that I've been around and I've rallied around him for a while. I've made no secrets about it. I mean, I just don't think that you do what he did throughout his entire career in minor league baseball by accident and then come up to the majors and just, this is his ceiling. This is Lewis Brinson. This is the only thing he's ever going to do as a major league baseball player. It does happen. We do hear about those quad A players, right? Just those guys that are awesome in AAA. They do everything they're supposed to do. They're great workers. They're great hitters, great fielders. And then they just come up to the majors and they can't translate. It does happen. It's very rare, right? I never saw that happening with Lewis Brinson. I mean, he kind of goes against everything that I've ever learned about, what I do and, scouting prospects and looking at stuff mechanically and stuff like that. And he's really kind of making me look at myself and be like, wow, I guess maybe I don't know everything about baseball, because I definitely don't, but I did not see this happening to Lewis Brinson. So, I mean, you'd ask me about what he's done since 2019 to last year, and hopefully coming into this year, that's different. The biggest thing for me, and I'm seeing this in a couple of other players, I posted not too long ago on my channel, Eli, about Victor Mesa and about what we see him doing. And it's streamlining the approach. Lewis Brinson, since 2019, he came into last year, and he's much more closed. He has much more straightaway stance at the plate. He's gotten rid of his leg kick timing trigger, and he's just waiting the ball out and letting the ball get deep. That's the key to being a simple hitter. I think he was very pressured, as we just discussed, coming up with the Marlins, and that all of these expectations are around him from not just fans, but the organization as well. They wanted to see this guy fly off the radar right away. Obviously, that didn't happen. So, not every prospect is Jazz Chisholm that's going to come up and not let the lights affect them. I mean, that's a rare thing to find, and I'm sure we'll talk about him. Jazz Chisholm, and of course we know now Lewis is going to come in and be put up against that. And people are going to say, well, if Lewis Brinson was so good, then why isn't he doing what Jazz Chisholm is doing? It's because not every prospect is just Rado Chisholm Jr. Yeah. That's the point. And I know that discussion is probably going to be made by fans, but I just want to get out of the way now. That to find a prospect like Jazz, and that speaks to how great Jazz is, you're not going to find that very often. This guy's been a slow build. He's been a slow rise. He's gone through so many hitting adjustments. He's gone through like 4 hitting coaches, I think, right, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just a guy that got tortured by circumstances. He has all the talent in the world. I really hope that he can recognize it. It probably won't be for the Marlins long term. I think he is a Major League Baseball player, though, in some regard. And it's just a tough case to analyze because of how much he's been through. But I do think that he's going to make the most of this opportunity, and hopefully I'm right.
Yeah, I mean, what in particular I agree with about the timing of this is that it does make perfect sense. This is the window for him as it works out, just because we know about that next wave of outfielders that are coming up soon. I mean, in particular, we know about Bleday. When JJ Bleday is ready, he'll be up here and he'll be playing close to every day, not likely in center field, but in one of the outfield spots. And then the rest of the other players have to kind of revolve around him to make sure that he's playing every single day. But it's also, guys, we just got the news today that Jesus Sanchez is officially off the injured list. He's been optioned. So that's an indication that he'll be ready for the start of the minor league season. And I'm pretty high on Jesus. I think he'll definitely be up this season. And he certainly has, I think he feel a lot better, at least about the floor of what he can do offensively. And that he's going to produce to some extent on that side of the field. Very obviously, he had a very disappointing debut last year, but it was a tiny sample. And he's even younger he's like 3.5 years younger than Brinson, someone that still has a long future ahead of him. Another guy that's unlikely to play center field. And I mean, at this very moment, that's what Brinson has working for him, is that he plays very capable center field. If you actually go by, that's an area where I feel he's been getting even better as his career's gone on. Last year, defensively, I thought it was the best he's ever played defensively. Center, he played actually more right field than center last year, and even a little bit of left field, if I remember. But he was great. I have a GIF somewhere of him robbing that home run. I think he robbed Juan Soto of a home run.
Up in DC.
And so in little ways he's improved. It's just, it was such a low baseline from where he was, where, I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. He was like the worst semi-regular player in the majors in 2018 and 2019. There's nobody getting that long of an opportunity, getting 700 plate appearances over the course of a couple of seasons, and yet being unable to get on base. And I mean, the low point was in 2019, where he didn't hit a single home run in the majors in like 250 plate appearances. And that's what was, that was the big red flag. You're like, if this is a guy that's one of his big tools, at least the raw power, the pull side power, and he wasn't getting to that at all. That made you worry. And then, I mean, last year was legitimately exciting. I think I think anybody that watched through that, especially the like little fire streak that he had in late August, early September, like
he was hitting everything against lefties.
Like the strides that he made during that time. And I mean, this is just the great window for him before Jesus Sanchez. You're not going to rush him up yet. We were really excited about Monte last year, but we know that as much concerns as we have about Brinson's offense, I mean, with Monte, the strikeout rate was just astronomical. And if you just like look at spring training, like I don't want to read too much into spring training, but Brinson was, again, he got off to a slow start kind of in spring. Well, he had that like down phase and then he ticked up again. And by the time it was all said and done, that he was actually doing some good things. He was consistently making hard contact. He was consistently putting the ball in play. That there was a reason why he made the opening day roster. And the fact that he was on the opening day roster made him, it's not like the organization suddenly bailed on him a couple weeks into the season. We knew that he was going to be the guy coming back up as soon as there was this obvious fit for him. And really the only surprise to me is just how much the tone that Mattingly had in this pregame presser, like making clear that Brinson is going to get a lot of starting reps, which wasn't even the case last year before the Marte trade. On previous streams, I've talked about how high I am on John Birdie and how to this point in the season, he's averaging about 2 plate appearances per game. More often than not, he's on the bench. And so far, his production hasn't been there, but if it's eerily similar to last season with Birdie. Birdie got off to a slow start last year that people might not remember. And then a couple weeks into the year, he kind of returned to the form he had in 2019, which is just a very good all-around player. We've seen him play center field before, and we know that at least his worst-case scenario as an offensive player is a little bit higher than Brinson, because Birdie is like a next-level impact base runner, and he's someone that knows the strike zone. And even though, I mean, at this stage of his career, like in my personal view, I think that Birdie should be playing a lot more than Brinson. Like I understand Brinson being on the major league team. I wouldn't be committing to as much playing time as the Marlins seem to be doing. But I don't really have a big complaint either way, because no matter what, as I think Alex mentioned it's going to be a big drop off from what they are accustomed to with Starling, no matter what. I mean, the best case scenario here, the team is worse than it was when Marte is in the lineup every single day. You're just hoping that the rest of the guys step up. And that's something we'll get into a little bit too. But if you have any final thoughts on Brinson, go ahead.
I just want to go one thing on Birdie, which is, I've said this in the past, we've talked about him a lot, where I think he's good in his role, right? I'm not sure that he, as an everyday center fielder, he would be as productive as he is. And the Marlins clearly like him in that role, right? So a lot of people wanted him in center field because they just assume that, the production that he has will just kind of translate. But I don't know if it will. I think what he does is what works for the Marlins and what works for him. The other thing is, his defense, we don't know how well it would keep up this year. Brinson had, you mentioned it, Eli, how good his defense was. He had 5 defensive run saves in center field last year in, a 60-game season, and I don't think he definitely didn't play all 60 games in center field. So, he was really, really good in defensively last year, and he was good in right field too. So there have been improvements, and I'm okay with the Marlins, giving him one last chance and just kind of going with it, because what other options do they have? With Jesus Sanchez, another corner outfielder, Brian Miller, probably a left fielder. Somebody asked if Dickerson could handle center field. He's a Gold Glover, but you don't really want to push him out of his, he won a Gold Glove in left field, but you don't really want to push him out of his comfort zone in left field, because that's where he's pretty solid. I'm not sure how well his defense would translate into center field anyway. So take the guy that's going to play good defense in center field, give him one last shot. And you know what? The reason I still have hope for Brinson is Byron frickin' Buxton up in Minnesota, right? He was the same thing. He might have been a little better than Brinson, and this guy's tearing the cover off the ball right now. I'm not saying that Brinson is just going to suddenly have this major jump that Buxton had, but it gives me hope that maybe somewhere along the line, Brinson will find something. Yeah, it might not be for Miami next year. I would hope that they go ahead and bring Marte back. It seems like that's a match made in heaven right now. So, assuming he comes back healthy and productive, I would assume that they're really going to go for him. So how much do they need Brinson? If he plays well enough to earn a starting job somewhere, then he's probably going to go. But I just hope for the guy that he can find it, because you said it, Alex, and I said it as well. He's just the nicest guy, and I'm going to be rooting for him the whole. I don't see any point in doing any other thing than rooting for the guy as a Marlins fan. So we might as well go for it. So.
Yeah, and alas for me, Eli, on this, because obviously you mentioned it's the topic right now that everybody's talking about. I'm with, and I'm sure my guy Pete, who's in the chat with me from Marlins today, would agree with me here. Every single time that Brinson comes to the plate, I'm rooting for this guy to get a hit. I'm rooting for him to put the ball in play and get on base wherever possible, because if there's somebody that deserves to succeed after all that he's gone through, it's a guy that deserves to succeed. We mentioned it. He's the nicest dude. He's charitable. He's always there for fans. I mean, it can't say enough about him as a person. You want to see him put it together as a baseball player, of course, that's his job, right? But, I mentioned it. It's just a rough story for him and how his career has gone so far. Obviously, the Marlins hope that he can put it together into something, right? Maybe he won't come up and hit, 300 with 20 home runs or whatever it may be. But if he can do something and, give himself a little bit of weight in the trade market, I think that's what the Marlins hope for. I don't think he's a Marlin past this coming season or this season. I would say he probably gets traded this offseason with all we have coming in the outfield. But yeah, as a centerpiece of that trade, you want to get something, right? You want to either get the production on the field or you want to get something back. So that goes a lot behind this decision, right? Not just the fact that they think he's earned the decision. That also goes into it, of course. I think the reason that you're going to be seeing him, Eli, you say you're surprised about the playing time, is for that reason. Other teams want to see that he's not a lefty-only threat, right? Other teams want to see that he can hit the ball against right-handed hitting or right-handed pitching if he's going to be a successful major leaguer. So I think that's the reason for this. I don't think that the Marlins will make this necessarily a season-long project. I think, if he comes in and in 10 games, he's hitting like sub 200 against righties, then he's probably going to be in the platoon role. So for the time being, it is what it is. We'll see what he does, but I'm rooting for him all the way, man. Let's go, Lou.
Yeah, what I wanted to get into now, solid 20-something minutes on Brinson. Yeah, I wanted to get into the pitching that we're seeing in this series against the Orioles. In particular tonight, making sure that we talk about Nick Neidert before he actually gets on the mound. This is his third career start. He was in, I guess, his seventh major league game, including last year's time. And this is by far his easiest opponent. I mean, he was, for people that haven't been following, he made his first major league start at the Mets on the Mets home opener. And he grinded his way through 4 2/3, only allowed 1 run in that situation. And then his next start, a homecoming for him against the Braves. He's a guy who's from Atlanta, had his family in attendance. That was nice. His pitching that night wasn't quite as nice. It was a similar result overall. A couple more runs came across, and the very weird trends in both of those outings is that he just was not throwing as many strikes, and he certainly wasn't hitting his spots as precisely as we've known him to do throughout his entire prospect career. He was someone that I was always very excited about, feeling pretty confident that he would be able to locate at least 3 of his pitches pretty consistently, his fastball, his slider, and his changeup. And now he also has his curveball that we've seen a couple nice ones through these first couple outings. But I mean, the bottom line is 9 walks in his first 9 innings pitched this season. I mean, that's something that he's never done at like any cold stretch of his pro career to this point. Like I said, I wrote this up actually on our website, is that in particular with this matchup, he's facing the Orioles. I think any casual fan could assume the Orioles are not very good this year, just by the fact that you don't recognize their players much at all, except for like Trey Mancini and Anthony Santander, who the Marlins reportedly had some trade interest in over the offseason, but he's off to a pretty rough start.
Who else do they even have? They don't have Iglesias anymore.
Their best player so far this year is their leadoff guy, Cedric Mullins. He's their center fielder. Interesting story on him, where he used to be a switch hitter, and all of a sudden he just focused on doing one side, and all of a sudden he's like hitting 350 with decent power now that he stopped trying to do both sides.
Is Mountcastle playing well? Has he been playing? Their young prospect?
He's not in the lineup tonight for sure. We'll have to check on exactly how big his role is. But as a team overall, they don't walk. I mean, they have like a 7% walk rate. It's the second lowest in the majors. And so, like, all things being equal, if like Neidert is the same guy he was his first two starts, maybe he has better results. And if he's hopefully even more comfortable with who he is at this stage with a little more experience under his belt, this is pretty big for him to really establish himself as a starter, right? Because there seems similar to Brinson. It seems like he has a window of several weeks at least until the other rotation options come back off the injured list. But they're not going to stick with him. There's a certain threshold, right? Where if he's walking one batter and Edding every single start, then they're going to pull the plug and try somebody else.
Right.
This seems just like a great matchup for him to straighten things out.
Yeah. I mean, I thought the last start, I think I mentioned it to you guys. I think his last start was a big spot for him. And of course, that's a tough team to gauge it against, right? Going against Atlanta. So as you mentioned, they're going against not a great team tonight, right? I wouldn't say. Maybe not a horrible team, but not a great team, a great lineup. And definitely not as good as Atlanta. So, yeah, he's at home, pitching in Lone Depot. We know that usually favors pitchers, right? So, this is a good spot for him to really prove it. What's really, really surprising to me so far, Eli and Ethan, about Nick Neidert is his changeup usage. This is a guy that his whole way up was fastball changeup, and he mixed in the slider. This year, he's not even throwing. I just looked at the number on Fangraphs. He's not even throwing the changeup 10% of the time. He's more slider. So, of course, that's only 2 starts. But, I mean, what does that say, right? He's gone away from what I thought was probably his best pitch, and he's going to the slider, which is a good pitch, but he doesn't locate it as well. So I would expect him. I can't speak for him, and we have to see what happens tonight. But I would expect him to get that changeup more involved tonight for sure. I would definitely expect to see that mixed in more with his pitching. I would say he goes fastball and pitches off of that and goes to the changeup. The changeup he could also pitch off of as well. But, yeah, really surprising to not see that changeup so far.
What I'll say on Neidert is that he really his peripherals aren't good. Like his FIP isn't any good and stuff. His analytics are kind of bad. But he really hasn't been terrible. Like he's only let up 8 hits in 2 starts, so an average of 4 hits start, but only 3 hits against the Mets. But it's been all the walks, right? So it's 9. You mentioned it, Eli, 9 walks in 9 innings, and that's just not what you expect from him at all. You expect him to miss a little bit of bats because his stuff moves so much, but he just hasn't been locating his stuff. And one thing that's been working against him is like that fastball going away from lefties. He just can't hit the outside part of the plate to lefties with that fastball. He was struggling with it so much trying to get guys out, and it seemed like he was ahead to guys, but then he just couldn't put them away kind of. And so I'm really the walks are really concerning, and so this is a good matchup for him in terms of, you mentioned 7% walk rate for the Orioles. They're not a very good team at all. So it'd be nice to see him just kind of locate, but I think he just has to get back to attacking. He's just got to go in and attack hitters. He wasn't doing that. He wasn't trying to get hitters to swing and miss. He's only got 6 strikeouts in his 2 starts, 3 apiece in each game. So you definitely want to see him just kind of go at hitters. He's got to try and go for it and really attack and get guys to start swinging and missing, because his stuff is good enough to create some swing and miss. As we saw in the minors, he had some starts where he racked up big strikeout numbers, and he's gotten swing and miss at times here, but he just hasn't been able to really finish at bats, it seems like to me, because he's been getting so loose and he's not really attacking. He's not trusting his stuff. And this is what, something that Trevor talked about, and it's Mattingly talked about it too, with young guys. They have to get over a hump. At some point, they get over a hump of, I know I can compete. I know I can that I can, get guys out at the major league level. And it seems like Neidert just has to get over this hump and tell him I can get guys out. I can get guys to swing and miss. I can strike guys out. I can come into the zone and get guys to swing and miss at my best pitches and use that changeup, use that curveball, use that slider to get that. He can even ring it up with, his fastball movement. So he just has to, I think it's mental for him right now, in terms of, his stuff looks good. I like the way his stuff looks in terms of the way it bends, what he's, how he's mixing his pitches, what the velocity, different differentials that he's using. I like his stuff. But I think it's just kind of mental and just getting over this hump of, I know I can get guys out. And that's kind of what Mattingly talked about after his last start, was he has to just know he can get guys out. And if he does, and he starts attacking and he starts gaining more confidence, Trevor has all the confidence in the world. And you've seen it from him when he gets all his swings and misses, how good he's been. So if Neidert can just have that aha moment, then I think we'll start to see more success from him, and hopefully he can get one tonight against a down lineup.
Yeah. Well, midway through the stream, we're welcoming on Daniel Rodriguez, and just to take you behind the curtain a little bit, he had every intention of being at Lone Depot Park tonight to cover the game, and I screwed up. I did not tell the team that I wanted him credentialed for the game, even though we made this plan like over a week in advance. And he messages me like a couple hours before the start of the game, and I realized, oops, I forgot to get him set up. So yeah, he's joining us here, and
from his office chair, that very comfy looking office chair.
Like Peter said, I might not be at the game, but I'll definitely be sitting in the comfiest chair.
Quick funny story, Eli. I actually did the same exact thing to myself on Sunday. I was planning to go to that game, and then I looked into the system, and I was like, did I apply? And I'm like, no, I didn't apply. It was after the deadline, so I was like, man, well, guess I'm watching on TV. So I've been there.
Yeah, first time this year. I was excited. We were going to have somebody at every game for this whole homestand, and I break my own streak, even though everybody's available for me. The one note I just thought of this, and I noticed it looking over the lineup tonight, even though it's a little surprising that Brinson is in there. He's obviously, we think, a better defensive center fielder than someone like Birdie, who would be the main alternative against a righty. And it's even more than that. We have Duvall starting this game in right field instead of potentially Garrett Cooper. We have Jorge Alfaro starting behind the plate. And even though Alfaro gets a lot of crap for his season overall, you look at the actual data, and he's been much more reliable pitch framer so far this year than Wallach has. You could say, all things considered, Alfaro's probably been the better defensive catcher so far. And you add it all up, and this is this is one of the best defensive lineups they could put out with their available players right now, which is important for Neidert, because even when Neidert is at the very top of his game, he's not Trevor. He's not going to strike out a dozen hitters. Even when he's at the top of his game, it's going to be about, as you said, having a lot of challenging hitters, throwing it in the zone, getting weak contact, especially getting ground balls. But there'll be balls in play no matter what, even against like this mediocre opponent. And I think that's really important that they put together this lineup, this defensive alignment that is arguably the best defensive alignment that they could put out there. I guess the one change they could make, they could squeeze like Sierra in there in place of Duvall or Dickerson, but that's a very big drop off at the plate. But this is a good balance between still having most of the regular hitters in there and having guys that are plus defenders at most positions as well. And so I think that's a little step. I don't know if that was intentional, but I wouldn't be surprised either. I think that is playing this particular matchup and knowing there will be balls in play and wanting Neidert to just be himself. And this is his first time actually pitching at Lone Depot Park, and one that certainly compared to Atlanta is a little bit more pitcher friendly. That I think they're setting him up for success as much as possible. And if for whatever reason he does struggle for even more so than his previous couple times, then they have a tough decision on their hands about what to do next time through the rotation. But they're doing everything possible to make him comfortable and allow him to take that step forward. So I like that aspect of it for sure.
Well, one thing I just want to say with Neidert is like, it really hasn't, except for the walks, like he's limited damage. He's only allowed these 4 runs, despite all the traffic that he's had. So he's had success kind of working out. In his first start, he really worked out of a lot of damage, and it was impressive the way he was kind of able to wiggle out of some innings and limit damage. And then last game, it was really just the 1 home run that he led up, if I remember correctly. So He's been pretty good at limiting damage and keeping runs off the board, but he's got to be more effective in keeping guys off the base paths. And then another thing I wanted to mention is you mentioned the defensive lineup. I've been so impressed with Duvall in right field. He made a couple great catches in Atlanta. He's got an absolute rocket of an arm. And so I've been really impressed with him. And, that's been a pleasant surprise is that he's played well out there in right field. And it's contributing to the fact that, neither guy has been great at the plate so far. I'm looking at their numbers and they're all really, really similar. He's got, he's got 3 defensive runs saved so far, Adam Duvall in right field this year, which is really impressive. So, this early in the season. So he's been really good there.
I think it's tied for the most of any right fielder in the majors right now.
Yeah. And so, that brings a little more value to him, right? Because I'm looking at it right now and there's not a huge difference in these numbers, except that Duvall is hitting for more power. So, 224 for Duvall, 209 for Cooper. Cooper's got the higher OBP. He's at 306 and Duvall's at 269. But Duvall's slugging 571, whereas Cooper has no power at 326 so far. Adds up to 127 versus 85 weighted runs created plus. So if you're looking for, neither guy has been great on offense so far. Duvall's had the upper hand because he's hit for power, and he really hit for power in that Atlanta series. But if you're looking for an upper hand and why to start one guy over the other, Duvall's got it right now because of how good he's been defensively.
Yeah. One thing to mention on the opponent and on Neidert as well. I mentioned I want to see Neidert use that changeup. That I think is huge for him tonight. He's got to get away from that. He's basically been a 2-pitch guy so far, right? He's just not using. I don't think, and you guys can tell me if you think I'm wrong. I don't think he's using all of his stuff advantageously. He's a 4-pitch guy, and basically he's thrown mostly 2 pitches. So the selection for me is what I'm watching for Nick Neidert tonight. I want to see him use a changeup. I want to see him use a curveball a little bit more. That's more of a mix in for him, but I do want to see him use that pitch. And for the offense, you look at the offense. Look at the opponent. Look at the pitcher we're going against, Matt Harvey, right? Horrible so far this year, and historically the Marlins torched this guy. Historically, the Marlins, I think in 11 games, I just looked at it, hit 298 against him, right? So a good spot for Brinson too, right? We talked about that, of course, as well. I'm not going to go back to that, but just a good spot for this offense as a whole, including Lewis, to come out and back him up, and for Nick to really get his stuff together and mix his pitches as well as he can. Those are the keys.
Well, while we were on Duvall for a second, this kind of unintentionally leads into something that I was looking up earlier, how he compares to some of the other in alternate universes where the Marlins go after a different outfielder over the offseason, because we know he wasn't their only target. They were, as a matter of fact, today they're going against Anthony Santander. That was someone that I know Craig Mish, for one, floated that as someone that they had some type of conversations with the Orioles to get Santander. We know from multiple reports that they were close to trading for Andrew Benintendi, formerly of the Red Sox, and he ultimately went to the Royals. And I brought up another name, one that during the offseason, the one that I was hoping they would get was someone like Jock Peterson, who would cost a little bit more money than Duvall, but had a much younger, much higher, more consistent on-base skills throughout his career, and someone that ultimately landed not that much more money than Duvall did on the market. And it's very early. We're about 10% through the year. The book is not closed on any of these guys, but you compare Duvall to any of the others, and the Marlins look like they hit a home run with that, because he's the one that is doing more or less exactly what was advertised. He's kind of the same guy he was the last 2 years with the Braves, when he was just a really good semi-regular outfielder. And you look at all those other guys, Benintendi, he has a 530 OPS. Peterson has a 536 OPS. Santander has a 526 OPS. They're all terrible. They're all absolutely terrible so far with their respective teams. It's kind of funny how they're all putting up the exact same numbers so far, even though they have kind of different skill sets and different track records. And yet here's Duvall, and the one that I think he was generally well received that late in the offseason, was better than doing absolutely nothing. But I think even by any standard, the fact that he's the oldest of the bunch and yet he's still performing at the same level now at 32 and a half years old, that it's been a nice surprise overall, especially if he keeps it up. And we know he's a streaky guy. He's always been very streaky, and he started off slow. This is after starting off really slow and just like that, he has that big series, and all of a sudden his numbers are on the opposite side of our expectations, that he can really go back and forth all that quickly. So it's all things being considered, it's nice to have him still around in this situation. He's not Starling Marte, and I don't think he's going to be playing necessarily every single day, even with Marte out. But just be grateful that they have him, that they did something. They could have done more this offseason, but he's been a reason why they won a couple of those Braves games. And he's going to be pretty critical for them moving forward.
Yeah, no, I've been pretty happy with Duvall. I mean, like he came in to hit for power, and he's doing it so far. That's all you can really ask for him, is that he's just hitting for power. That's what they needed. They needed more power in the lineup. It was something that they've lacked for years now, and he's brought that so far. At the very least, he's slugging. His slugging numbers are huge. So every time he hits the ball, it seems like he hits the ball hard and he hits it far, and that's what they wanted from him. And so it's been a very nice addition for sure.
Maybe I should come on
it'll
here.
Contribute over 162 for sure.
Yeah, sorry about that. Maybe I should come on here more with you guys and talk crap about a player, and then just watch them go off in the next game. Because I think last time that we were on here, I just said, Adam Duvall, I'm not doing anything. I don't want Garrett Cooper. I don't want him in the lineup. And then he just goes off against the Braves. So maybe that had something to do with that. I don't know. But yeah, glad to see him pick it up because this is what we wanted him to do, right? This is what we signed him for. The defense is a plus, which Ethan mentioned. I did not expect him to be doing this in the field at all. He's been really good in the field. So yeah, nice to see him pick it up. I think that Brave series against his old team might have been a little bit of a shot in the arm for him, right? So yeah, awesome. This is what we signed him for. Glad he's doing it.
In an alternate universe where I don't screw it up and Daniel, you go to the ballpark as you're supposed to, was there anything in particular that you were looking forward to seeing from this game? Any individual player that you were going to be focused on at this point, aside from the guys that we've already touched on?
I think Ethan touched on it the best, talking about the walks that Nick Neidert has given up. Because I'm just looking at the stats now. In 9 innings, he has 9 walks. That's not really what you want to see. And then you compare it to Matt Harvey, who we're all saying, has been horrible, not the same player at all since the Mets, has only given up 3 walks in 14 innings. So seeing that, if I were to go to the game, that's what I would be focusing on Nick Neidert and how he handles walking, especially going up against the Orioles you have Cedric Mullins, who's been going off this whole year, hitting around 350. Trey Mancini, who's just coming back from cancer, but that's another guy that you just want to watch out for. But I'll say those 2 guys specifically when going up against Nick Neidert and how Nick maybe potentially giving up the walks compared to Harvey.
Mancini beat cancer. It's crazy, and he's just back and jumping in, and it's obviously been a struggle so far, but I think it's fair to assume why he's been struggling. He took a year off from baseball, and now he's got to work back. He's got to build his strength again, find himself again. And so, yeah, it might take some time for him to hop back in, but he's always dangerous. You always have to be careful with Trey Mancini. He's a very good baseball player, and he's going to find his stroke eventually. And you don't want to be the series where he finds it. It feels like the Marlins are always that team, right? Like Brendan Crawford went off last series, which he always does against the Marlins. Brandon Belt had been struggling. He had a really good series against the Marlins with a few big hits. So you don't want to be the team that lets Mancini get rolling. So try and limit the damage there. Try and limit the damage with Mullins. Like you got, you, Eli, and Daniel talked about. He's been great this year. Try and limit the damage with him. Try and keep him from wreaking havoc because the offense is really depleted right now. You're missing the best offensive player that you have, the best player on your team, the best player this organization has had in a long time, probably 4 years, I would say, since they had Stanton probably. Even the versions of Ozuna and Yelich that they had probably weren't as good as Starling Marte has been. You're going to have a huge drop off. So the Marlins are going to need starting pitching all year long, right? We've said that their starting pitching is going to keep them in every game, and it's going to give them a chance to win every game. This is going to be a really important series, the first series without Marte, to kind of keep them in games and keep it so that their offense doesn't have to do too much. You're not putting too much pressure on the offense. And so Neidert, like you mentioned, Eli, they're going to take some of that pressure off him with a really good defensive lineup behind him. He's going to have to take some pressure off the lineup by going out there and pitching really effectively.
Yeah, and look at it from the other side. We just looked at it from the Marlins side, being a big start for Neidert and a couple of other guys, right? Look at it from the Orioles side. This is an offense that has not been good so far, right? But look at this lineup. It's not going to be easy for Neidert because he's going up against how many lefties? He's got 4 lefties and a switch hitter, right? So most of that lineup is going to be batting from the left side against him. And I haven't looked at his splits. I mean, I know his splits in the minors against lefties versus righties were pretty even. I mean, maybe a slight edge to lefties, but you expect that. Haven't looked at them this year in the majors or last year, but I think it's too small of a sample. So, yeah, it's going to be nice to see or intriguing to see how Neidert lives up to pitching against mostly a left-handed lineup because that's
lots of changeups, please. More changeups.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll
pitching
see.
away to lefties. Am I wrong, or is Maikel Franco a guy that's always killed the Marlins? Am I wrong in saying that? Like when he was on the Phillies, was he a Marlin killer somewhat? Because if he just feels like one of those guys that just for whatever reason decides to destroy the Marlins every time we play him.
They faced him obviously a bunch of years in the Phillies. I don't know the overall stats off the top of my head.
Let me see if I can find it. I don't know if this Fangraphs do team splits, but yeah, this Orioles lineup, they're the Orioles. They've picked in the top 5. I want to say the last 2 or 3 years. So, and Adley's not here yet. And Mountcastle, their rookie, supposed to be one of their top prospects. I looked up those numbers. We talked about him earlier. He's really struggling. So there's not a ton of offensive potential here. And so 2 big starts for Neidert and for Trevor even tomorrow to really keep him rolling, keep him on track, work against a good lineup, put up a big strikeout number because you want to see him start building some confidence.
Yeah, what I wanted to finish on is the hotshot rookies, both Trevor and Jazz, and how, I mean, at this very moment, I don't have the best perspective on the entire league, but I feel like, those guys are going to be neck and neck in the rookie of the year race if they keep this up.
Jazz, I've been looking at the rookie numbers recently. Got to be the favorite right now. He's I'm pretty sure he's first in OPS, first in weighted. Maybe let me look that up. I'm pretty sure he's first in OPS, maybe second in weighted runs created plus or something like that. And he is the best second baseman in the league this year. He has the highest OPS. He has the highest weighted runs created plus by a good margin among second basemen right now. So let me look at rookies. Besides like Yerman Mercedes, who is just tearing the cover off the ball in the National League, I'm pretty sure that he has the highest. Yes, he does. He has the highest weighted runs created plus at 199 in the National League. So he right now, later in the clubhouse. This early in the season, we're getting towards the 20 game mark, right? He has to be the favorite. He is first in OPS, first in weighted runs created plus in the National League. He has a 1.126 OPS and a 199 weighted runs created plus. He has been fantastic. And if Trevor keeps it up and keeps dealing like this, like he did in his last start, and then he was obviously great when he played DeGrom, he can be in the running too. But boy, is it fun what the Marlins have with these 2 guys right now. And if Neidert can become a third one, that would be really something. If you have, two rookies in the rotation and then you get Sixto back eventually, now we're talking dirty right now. But you're talking about two guys that are in the charge somewhat. And then if Neidert can deal now, you're talking about 3. And that could be really, really exciting for what the Marlins have in store.
Peep that shirt, by the way, Eli. I know you saw that before, but there you go. Breaking Tea, smooth jazz shirt. Love to see it.
It took him a couple of weeks. We put that together with Breaking Tea right before the season started. Yeah. And I don't know exactly what the holdup is, but we're very grateful for Jazz for actually putting that on and glad he likes it. And
he's got some new hair. He's got like little Yachty braids.
Yeah, right.
He's got to be confident in everything. And the show just came out the other day. He's like a rated of 65. So he's probably looking at that, making sure,
I wanted to ask him about
notice.
That. Yeah, I wanted to ask him. He hasn't been on the press conference since the show has been released, but I know he would definitely have something to say about that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. 65, I saw that today. I was like, what? Are you kidding?
Yeah,
this guy's at least a 75.
He's literally been the second best or the best second baseman in baseball this year, which is crazy to talk about the fact that you're looking at, you know, a Marlins player that's the best at his position in the league right now, through, you know, what is a somewhat sustainable sample size. I mean, he's at 51 plate appearances, so it's not, you know, it's still very early, obviously, but you're starting to get into that 50 to 100 plate appearances territory where you start looking at what kind of, you know, around 100 to 150, you're looking at what kind of year a guy is going to have, and he's going to go through struggles. That's, you know, Mattingly said that in his press conference today. It happens to everybody. Nobody doesn't slump over the year. Even the best players in the league are going to slump over the course of a baseball season. But if he can slump, get out of it, start hitting again, you know, the guy's going to have a great year. And so I'm putting him on rookie of the year watch early. I don't know how many people were really zoned in on him, but, you know, everybody talked about Sixto, and then obviously he got hurt. But with how he's been performing so far, he has a legitimate rookie. If the season ended today, which it obviously doesn't, he would win it. And so it's shaping up to be, he has a great case to be rookie of the year.
I think the only guy close to him would be his fellow infielder, right, from the Dodgers, Zach McKinstry. I think that's like the only guy that touches him right now in terms of rookie stats.
Tyler Stevenson. So the top three OPSs. Well, let's just go top. Yeah, because there are four guys really that are like three guys really that are playing every day, and it's him, McKinstry. Oh, four guys: Dylan Carlson and Phillip Evans. Yeah. So those are the guys that you're going to be really looking at. Stevenson has a 940 OPS, but he only has 25 plate appearances.
Right.
So, you know, you're looking at McKinstry with 55. He's got a 934 OPS. Dylan Carlson, stud, 61 plate appearances, 917 OPS. And then Phillip Evans, 59 plate appearances, 863 OPS. So these are the guys. And then once Sixto gets in, depending on how late he gets into the race and how good he becomes, he could get into it. If Trevor's really good, you could be talking about, you know, Devin Williams was a reliever that won Rookie of the Year last year, so it wouldn't surprise me if Trevor is dominant, if he has a good case. But these are the guys right now. If you're looking at it, it's Jazz, it's McKinstry, it's Carlson, and it's Evans that you're looking at early on in terms of, you know, the guys that could be competing for this National League Rookie of the Year.
Well, this is something of a misconception with this stuff. I mean, obviously, all we can focus on right now is the guys who have played and how much they've played, but it's very often, I would say off the top of my head, if not half the time, maybe even more than half the time, the Rookie of the Year winner is not a guy who was in the majors the entire season.
Exactly.
And, I mean, of course, the front runner in the National League entering this year, I think by everybody's account, was Brian Hayes, from the Pirates. And is he even back from his injury yet? Because he got injured just a few games into the year, and he might still be out.
He got hurt like the second or third game of the year in the Cubs series, and I don't think he's played since.
Right. And I mean, even in addition to him, and you know that when he's back, he'll be playing every single day for a terrible team that doesn't really have any other competition for him at that position. In the way that the Marlins, even with Jazz, I mean, the reason why he wasn't top of mind entering spring training is because entering spring training, we didn't know that he would be getting the starting job at second base. I mean, you need to put yourself in that mindset that you could go back even a month, even to like the middle of spring training, and there was still some doubt about which way that race would go. So that explains why to some people it feels like it came out of nowhere, just because we didn't know that he would have an everyday spot or anything, or even an active roster spot for the good first chunk of the season. I just say to keep in mind, again, I'm not the best person to bring this up because I don't have a great mind for what's going on with all 15 National League farm systems right now. But with the Marlins, we're looking forward to seeing what Sixto can do once he eventually recovers. But almost every other team has their own top prospects that they're hoping to break through as the season goes on. And they don't need the whole season to win it. In most cases, you need the majority of the season. There have been some like freaky outliers in certain situations. Yordan Alvarez was that freaky situation where he was only up a couple months, and
but he was so good. Yeah,
it could go in a few different directions where you don't necessarily need to be the consensus top prospect to be the one that ultimately wins the award. I mean, regardless, we're just going to have some fun with what we know right now. I'm sure on Fish Stripes pretty soon I'll be getting a series going on that's tracking the Rookie of the Year race and how the Marlins are comparing to other guys going on, because people love to follow that. And this team has a pretty rich tradition when it comes to contending for that award. The most recent one being the late, great Jose Fernandez. And even before him, it was Hanley, it was Chris Coughlin. It was I'm blinking.
There's
on
4, right?
I'm blinking on the one other guy.
Dontrell Willis?
Yep.
Yeah, it was probably D
Yep.
trade.
Yeah, it was.
That's crazy.
This is always something that's top of mind. It was top of mind even a couple of years ago with Brian Anderson. You might not remember. He got off to a pretty hot start where he was OPSing like 920 or 930 through the first couple months of the season, and he was getting on base. And I don't think anybody really thought he was going to win the award. But when the team was bad, I mean, that's something that people focus on. And we're entering a really fun time because the team is not bad at the moment. We could argue about exactly where they'll be as we get deeper into the year, but for the time being, this is the best, most complete team they've put together since the start of the rebuild. And the fact that you actually have rookies right in the middle of it, that this is perfect. I mean, everybody loves this. Everybody loves seeing the former top prospects succeed and seeing how it actually translates to the team overall. But yeah, so I'd pump the brakes on saying that Jazz has it locked up or anything.
Yeah,
and,
no. 15 games into the season,
Well,
right?
yeah.
What are we, 7 and 8? So
Clearly, and what Eli said is true. It's not always the guy that is here for the whole season that wins this award. Usually not. I mean, I guess you could probably say it's split, but the last 4 times that we just talked about that the Marlins have done it, Jose was here most of the year. Dontrell was here, I think, all year. Hanley was here most of the year. And I think Coughlin was like 115, 120 games, maybe 130. So statistically and historically for the Marlins, it's been that guy that's been here most of the year. So, but yeah, long way to go. See what happens. But you can't argue with Jazz's start, man.
All right, well, I think we're going to wind it down right here with 3 minutes to go until first pitch at the Depot, the Big D, Marlins
Big
Park.
D.
Call
I
it
like
any-
the Depot.
Joe Robbie Stadium.
Yeah.
Let's get bobblehead Urena in here for good luck.
Oh,
luck,
God.
Ray.
Maybe a curse, Daniel. Come on.
Between the Marlins and Orioles, a 2-game series tonight. And then remember, if you're watching this, we still have a couple people watching this tomorrow, very early turnaround, 1:10 p.m. Eastern time. I'm sure that our friends across the pond will love that. That's a UK-friendly start time to get us out of there before they go on a big road trip. And
No Super League. No Super League.
Yeah, that's,
Shout out to Peter out there.
it's been a good day. It's been a good day for that type of stuff. But we'll wind it down here with Alex Carver and with Ethan Badowski, Daniel Rodriguez. I'm Eli Sussman, and I guess we'll be back with another stream probably on Thursday to preview the Giants series, which is going to be a 4-game set on the West Coast. Finally getting some late night with the fish.
Ooh.
Love those. Have a good one.
Yeah. And as always, go fish.